Right, Councillor Mike.
I'll be very brief, Mr Mayor. I won't go into any evidence, but just to look at the history of this case, which goes back many years, culminating in a Court of Appeal decision in 1994, which also related to the validity of the metropolitan urban limit. But there has been mention of the two Environment Court cases, and of course the views of the independent panel. One thing that has been not mentioned, and in regard to the management's recommendations, which I support, but I think there's more to it than transport links and traffic congestion. The Hauraki Gulf Marine Park Act hasn't been mentioned, but I think that is very germane to this particular catchment, and the Act and the marine reserves and all those court decisions just underlines how significant this particular area is. And one more point I would make is that the council itself undertakes regularly the State of the Environment report, and the state of the environment for the Hauraki Gulf recent reports have not been good, and certainly provide further evidence which would bolster the council's case or a Section 32 analysis. It all goes back, of course, to the Resource Management Act, Part 2, Section 6A, inappropriate subdivisions and development in the coastal environment, the preservation of the natural character of the coastal environment, and Section 7, the maintenance and enhancement of amenity values and the intrinsic value of ecosystems. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, I've had three speakers for, any against?
I had a question.
Yes.
And I am very mindful that this is not just an issue for the North. This is an issue, given the investment that the council has made in the regional parks, which are for all of the people of the region.
Yeah.
I just wonder whether officers can provide us any further information in terms of the impact of this. You know, the zoning has been a highly contentious issue here. The impact that this will have on the investment council has made into the regional parks.
The recommendations from the panel are broadly supported by the parks staff, senior parks management within the council, in that the panel has recommended significant additional areas of open space to be zoned open space. So generally speaking, the council's park staff have been well aware of this proposal, and it would involve the potential increase in the regional park land, but obviously there are discussions around the commercial aspects of that.
Right. Is this a question? Because I'm looking for a speaker against this, otherwise I'm going to put it. Question.
Sorry, what do we put? Is this an amendment? Sorry, I'm not clear.
Process,
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
just foreshadowed.
No, I'm not.
So what do we put in?
That is foreshadowed, and I'm not going to put that. We're going to, if this fails, right, if what is proposed here to accept the recommendations fails, then we're going to go back to getting a Section 32.
Yep.
That'll be a part of our discussions on Monday. All right, remember, this is how we've got to go about it. All right, so Wayne's, all of Councillor Wayne's stuff, in the end, that will be a part of the report back from the council officers.
But can I just ask them?
Sorry, yeah, I want to ask some questions.
Okay, just hang on. So we had Councillor Chris. Councillor Chris D, have you got a question?
Question.
Yeah, there you go.
So earlier we've seen that the IHP has eroded the design statements, eroded sustainable design. There's a lot of reference here to the importance in the structure planning of water-sensitive urban design and a lot of reliance on that. So can you tell me, in the plan, has the IHP upheld our position on water-sensitive urban design outright?
The short answer is yes. I mean, there are nuances in there, and there are different standards and techniques and so on that have been amended, but the overall view from the stormwater and water quality experts is that the intent and the overall approach is broadly supported by the panel, and therefore we haven't raised changes to water-sensitive design as a policy shift that the panel has recommended.
So the water-sensitive urban design provisions that are contained within the structure plan proposed by Okura Holdings, I think it is, will avoid, full stop, avoid, not be more than minor in terms of sedimentation into the receiving environment of the marine reserve.
We would have to come back, having talked to our experts, to answer that precisely.
So that's a fundamental question that it's very difficult to proceed unless we have that. That's fundamental to our decision making here, because we're dealing with a New Zealand coastal policy statement and we're dealing with a marine reserve, not just any receiving environment. And I think, Mr. Mayor, it's premature to put this unless you have that technical information.
Get an answer.
When will we get that?
I mean, one of the challenges of answering that, Councillor Darby, is that that would be specifics to the actual development of the land, not in terms of the proposed zoning and precinct. So until the applicant or landowner actually went for a subdivision consent and did put in their application, there would be no way for us to give you a yes or no answer at this time. So it's not a question of asking our experts at the moment. That is something that would have to be assessed when they went for their subdivision consent and following resource consents for any development. What the panel has said in their report is that they believe that the necessary matters that need to be considered to give this land a live zoning have been addressed by the experts. Now, whether the governing body agrees with that conclusion of the independent hearings panel is what you are voting on now.
So just briefly, Mr. Mayor, there is a lot of reliance in the decision of the AHP on the structure planning and the specific reference to the water-sensitive urban design, and that's because it's a receiving environment of the marine reserve. So it is not reliant upon the waiting for development. It's the dealing of the structure plan.
Yeah, look, councillor.
So the technical information is required.
Well, yeah, look, we could ask for that for every single thing we do here. We're not being asked for that. We've actually, the hearing panel has actually been through that, or is presumed to have been through it. So, look, I think we can actually make a decision based on what we've got here at the moment, and there will be further if the decision is to reject. And so if you've got doubts, well, you know what to do. So I've got Councillor Linda next.
No, actually, no, I guess my question is, I mean, there's parts of this that the staff have recommended to reject. I just want to feel really confident. I mean, I do trust our staff, but the parts that you're asking us to accept or recommending that we accept, I just want, I suppose, to hear again, and I'm sorry, that you feel confident that the protections that are needed for this sensitive area have been addressed in this part, and where are we? Q.
Q and R&S.
Yeah, R&S. So in terms of that response to that, Councillor Cooper, what officers are saying is that within the provisions that have been recommended by the panel, and particularly in the precinct provisions, they have put in mechanisms within which to assess future development on the land against things like stream management, stormwater and earthworks management. So they are all provisions they've put into the precinct. We can't confidently say anything about the actual development because there is no consent to do that. The one area that we have identified that is of concern is the provision of transport mechanisms to ensure that the transport network around that area, which is still very much a rural activity, can be managed with triggers that had been discussed between the council's transport experts and the landowner's transport experts, but for some reason were not included in the precinct plan provisions.
Given its use.
Okay, got it. Councillor George?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I'd just like to know what the process would be from here on if the governing body decided to reject this in relation to the rights of the property owners concerning the Environment Court.
So
Speaker.
if the governing body decides to reject the recommendation of the hearings panel to extend the rural urban boundary, to apply live zoning and to apply a precinct, then we would have to craft reasons for doing so, and then there would be appeal rights to any submitter who put a submission in on this topic in front of the independent hearings panel. There would not be appeal rights to the general public. It would be restricted to those people who put in submissions to the independent hearings panel. Yeah.
So the matters that have been canvassed by the independent hearings panel that where they arrived at their decision, which is pretty extensively more than other areas, could be canvassed again before an Environment Court judge.
If you decided to reject the recommendation of the hearing panel today.
It's better.
If somebody has to lodge an appeal,
So I think that's important, but also in relation to Long Bay, that matter was dealt with by the Environment Court a few years ago now, and the Environment Court did come down on the size of development in Long Bay. Is that correct?
so in terms of Long Bay, yes, there was an Environment Court a decision about the current development that's happening there at the moment. And the Environment Court did provide for development of that area. It did put in with, certain measures and rules to apply to that, but yes, it did enable a development.
And have you got any information in relation to sediment issues and whether there's exceedances going into the Long Bay area?
So my understanding, all of that information was part of the conversation about this area in front of the independent hearings panel. I don't have that information to hand at the moment, but I understood it was raised by the range of submitters who presented to the independent hearings panel at that time.
Okay, right. Look, I think I've got Councillor Ross, and then I think we need to get on and move this. So, Councillor Ross.
Yeah, I just want to focus on the transport because it just seems like a little bit of a conflict here between Q2 and S. And a little bit, so I'm going to ask a question at the end of this. I'm just a little bit concerned at the top of page 104, where if it says the panel envisages that the upgrades and appropriate funding can be reprioritised once the project is operative and the council's long-term plan is reviewed. I mean, it's really not for them to make a recommendation that we're going to reprioritise our budget, I would have thought. I find that inappropriate. So I feel as though we need, given this is the biggest public turnout we've had, and there's obviously a significant issue for the community around there. I can't help.
Stop.
I can't help.
Stop. No, hang on. Oh, yeah.
Question is over the
No, stop, please.
transportation.
No. So, yes, there are a number of members from the public here, but in this hearing, we do not have any note of that at all. We sit here in many ways holding the position of being judges. You understand the legal nature of this. This is the reason why we get so much advice from the lawyers in behind us. So we've got to be really careful. And what the public think about this is interesting, but not relevant to the decision making we got to make on this occasion. On just about every other occasion it is.
Absolutely.
Okay, Ross, so
Point.
look, I'm sorry, it's important that I really ran that home.
I'm going to move on, so I'm just going to say that I feel as though we just should be rejecting this at this stage, and I wouldn't be supportive of Councillor Walker's complex amendments, and would be just like to see a normal, simple amendment or resolution put up that we ask for more information to come back.